Everybody, I'm pumped for this one. Like this is going to be so much fun. I've had the pleasure of knowing, starting with Nick. I've known Nick for a while now. And for those who don't know, because it is a B2B marketing audience, he's one of the world's leading authorities in D2C advertising. He spends over 100 mil on Facebook ads alone. And as the founder of Structured Social, Nick famously helped Pup Socks generate 13 mil in just 32 days. And for Diff Eyewear, achieved 255K in 24 hours. So this is why we talk about D2C knows what's going on. So everybody, welcome Nick to the stage, y'all.
What's up, Evan? What's up, guys? Good to see you. Good energy
Most
so
definitely.
far. It's some people are coming in all over the place, and so it's I get to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here because I'm definitely outnumbered compared to what I'm seeing on the stage. And so Dave and I we'll have some interesting takes. I will tell you that much.
And you have a super cool experience too, where you actually have a lot of exposure to B2B SaaS. So whether like your experience is in D2C, but you see the exposure and like work with a lot of B2B brands. So I think it'd be super cool.
Thanks,
Cool.
man.
And then everyone, I don't think I need to introduce Dave, but I really want to because this is super fun for me. So think of it as selfish. But everyone, Dave run Exit 5. You already know him. He's probably your favorite guy on the internet at this point. But Exit 5 is the #1 community for B2B marketers. He's the former VP of marketing and CMO with over 10 years of experience in B2B SaaS. And he's worked at Drift and Privy, to name a couple of them. Plus, he's authored a book called Founder Brand. So please go check that out. You know we have to plug, especially when we have guests on the stage. So welcome Dave to the stage as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I think you need to revisit your if I'm on the top of your favorite list, we gotta send me a message. I'll send you 3 other people you should follow. But I appreciate the kind words, and I'm always excited to chop it up and talk about marketing with people who who get it and want to do great stuff. And like you said, for some reason B2B lags behind. I don't think that needs to be the case. And if anything, you can make the case that we should be spending more and investing more because the deal size is bigger, because the sales cycle is more complex. I did an interview with a CMO last week, and she was like, people don't understand. There needs to be more emotion in B2B. There needs to be more creative in B2B because it is such an emotional purchase. You're going to spend $100,000 on a piece of software or something for your business. That is much more emotional than me scrolling through Instagram and deciding to buy a new hoodie. So I think this is a great topic, and I'm happy to be here.
I love it. I love it. Okay, this is a perfect segue to our first question here. So I want to set the stage of like when we talk about D2C being at the forefront of it. So Nick, this one's for you. But I think like
Yeah.
there's probably a lot of other context you can fit into this one. But as a D2C guy, what's the first thing you would do at a B2B company if you stepped into the reins or you started holding the reins?
Well, I think the biggest issue that we deal with is we don't have the margins that B2B has. So we're looking for any incremental win, which is usually creative iteration and speed of output. So we'll say like on a handful of the brands that we have or manage, like we're trying to get 30 to 60 pieces of creative a week out. That's because we're trying to find just a little bit more improvement on ending the sales side. And like, look, our usual consideration period is, even if it's a more expensive $100, $300 product, still going to be maybe 48 hours, 72 hours the max. So that ability to get instant feedback on some of these platforms, I mean, we've been using Motion for quite a while on the D2C side because we have to. Like, we don't have the opportunity to kind of let it spend $1,000 to $2,000, $3,000, which might be what it would be for CAC for a B2B side of things. But it is very important that we're getting speed, volume, and that like creative start, iteration, and testing phase up and running. And I think that's something that I think on the B2B side is you do have to kind of let it run a little bit longer, and you have those earlier metrics to make decisions around. And I'm super curious on like, are the leading indicators to sign up? Are we pushing the webinar first? And it's been interesting for me to dive deeper on the B2B side of things.
There's a piece of that I think B2B marketers should take, which is Nick talked about 30 to 40 pieces of creative. Man, if I go to my LinkedIn, all the ads that I see for B2B companies look like ads to me. They look like digital business cards. They look like somebody went into Canva and just stuck to the exact brand guidelines and made like the equivalent of an email signature that is an ad. And what I think is so amazing, like as somebody who just studies consumers and studies people, why do we make ads that look so much like ads? You go to the D2C side and you see humans, you see creative, you see different colors. Like we have this, for some reason, because it's B2B, we are more obsessed with the ads being on brand, and on brand meaning like has our colors. And there's a great, I don't know if maybe this is the right crowd for this, but there's a great old school copywriting book from Gary Halbert called The Boron Letters. And Nick just lit up because he's like, okay, I like this guy. Yeah, he's like, all right. So in the Boron Letters, Gary Halbert's talking about how he calls it like the A pile and the B pile. And it's like, you come home from work, you go to your mailbox, you get the mail, you pull out this stack of mail, and you have a stack of home, flyers from Home Depot and Lowe's and Bed Bath and Beyond, and you sort through all that nonsense. And then there's this one white envelope with handwriting on it that looks like it's personally addressed to you, and it's a note because every year on your birthday your grandma sends you $10 in the mail, right? Whenever we grab that pile of mail, that's the first thing we do. We go immediately to that one. We put all the catalogs and flyers and stuff to the side, and we go to that handwritten note and we open that one first, right? So I want to think about, as a marketer, how can I get my stuff in the A pile? And so I don't want to design my creative. I don't want my ads to come off instantly at that trigger that we get in our brain that this is an ad. I want to get in the A pile. I want to get someone to open that. I think people obsess too much over the creative being on brand versus what is the goal? The goal is to get you to stop scrolling in your feed, to take the next action, and to take the next step. That should be the goal, not to have like the perfectly, blue and purple design motion looking ads.
The crazy thing about this is like most of the people that are jumping on calls or booking calls or demos with the SaaS teams are still a consumer of X, are still a consumer of TikTok, are still a consumer of put in any platform you want to be. Like, it's still a human on the other side that's needing to justify why I'm taking this call for the potential investment of thousands of dollars over a year span or however long the contract's going to be. But those elements, like my favorite question we like to ask is like, what was the last ad you actually remembered? Right now, it's probably Jaguar, because that's what everyone's talking about. That's what all the feeds are going to be filled with. And you forget that the speed of forgetfulness, especially with what's going on in the world right now, especially what we just went through on the election, and now we go into the end of the year, like they're not going to know what just hit them. And so the more volume and the ability to read the volume is actually more important than the logo off. Did they say that incorrectly? Is that not as perfect? And maybe Dave, it's because like the investment is so much that they feel that the ad has to look at a certain quality or a certain value. Do you think that could be it?
Yeah, there's a perception of like, oh my gosh, we're going to spend, X dollars on this. And so we have to have it perform. But then I would just push people to think about like Nick in that world. Like it is a volume. I think for some reason it's more about like the perfect creative than it is about a volume game. And that it is a volume game. It's like, and it's actually like any creative exercise. Like anytime I'm trying to write a headline for something, or we're trying to name something, like we did our first event this year in September, and for like 2 months we were stuck on the name. And one day, my business partner and I, Dan, we just were like, here's how this works. We need to each write 50 names in a Google Doc. Like 48 of them are going to be shitty, and maybe 1 or 2 there is the right one. And I think like so much of the activity of creative and marketing is like, you just got to generate more ideas. And so I love the idea of like, let's generate a bunch of ideas for creative. Let's let the audience vote. Let's run quick tests on impressions and engagement, and then double down with our spend. You also have another variable here, which I think is so important today. And Gary Vee talked about this in his latest book, and I love Gary, but he says basically like what people don't realize today is that, so I don't actually person myself, I don't spend any dollars on advertising. I'm more of like, I create a lot of organic content. I have a business now. We're investing a lot more money in ads this year, so I'd have more insights for you next year at this time. But for me, it's organic. I post on LinkedIn basically every day. And Gary Vee put it perfectly. He's like, what people don't realize is actually every one of those posts is essentially an ad, right? An organic post is an ad. There's no paid spend behind it, but it's an ad because it's a signal. Like every time someone sees something from me in the feed, that is a drop in my bucket, plus or minus. Maybe somebody ignores it, maybe somebody engages or not, but all those little things are ads. So let's think of them like that. And let's think of each piece of organic content we put out as a way to get feedback. And then that's going to actually inform our creative strategy. I'm sure this is how you live now, Nick, which is like organic is because of social media. You can get so much feedback that maybe I'm not spending a lot on paid right now, but I bet you that I could come up with 20 ideas right now because of how much organic content. I know what my audience wants. I know what those people want. Then we can go and invest and make the creative. I find that a lot of times, like, you're not doing high volume testing on paid. You're not doing high volume testing on organic. You're just literally making up an idea of what you think is going to work. And you just spent 20 hours making one ad. And Nick's over here saying, no, we need 50 times the volume of that. Well, why don't I just go to LinkedIn right now? I'll sort all my posts by impressions and engagement. We'll export them and we can go and make 20 or 30 ads like in the next 2 days based on what we already know from signals from social.
Well, and this is the last thing, Evan, because I know there's like one more question after this, and we can go as deep as we can on this. So,
Evan's just gonna chill, man. We're good.
David, there's a little bit in your book about this of like building the personal brand around it. Like those Chase Diamond, which is our partner, who has like 375,000 followers now, or on LinkedIn. You're pushing almost 200,000 on your own. I'm growing on my side. Organic first, that leads the strategy for the team to ideate around what should be long form, what should be episodal, and what should be a fleshed out download, webinar, etc. That's the tester. And that if you were to back out and put a CPM, a cost per impression, what you have, like, that is invaluable. You're doing millions of impressions, millions and millions of impressions that you technically aren't having to pay for, especially if you have someone on your team or if the company is building. And I know even Motion, you guys pump out, because you're a creative team, you guys pump out across your figureheads and the branded LinkedIn page. You guys are probably doing on a CPM basis free $11 CPMs because of what LinkedIn shows. Like it's actually incredible going organic ideation into paid.
There's something really interesting here about just like community building ultimately, because we're talking about those audiences that you are building, because paid is just like almost a cheat code to be able to get eyeballs that wouldn't be able to see you at the end of the day if it wasn't for those algorithms. But both of you have really leaned into the idea of building community. So I'm wondering if both of you can speak to your thoughts on community. But one of the pieces I do want to make sure is I saw that there's like individual performance marketers and individual creative team members that are here too. So Nick, I'm wondering, before we jump into community, if you can talk about the volume of creative a little bit more. So it's just like, why is it so important to reduce at volume there? And then Dave, on your end, tying that to the organic side as well, of like, why do you post as often do you do? And then we'll just keep going on community after that.
So the issue around volume now more than ever is, we used to believe that the targeting was more important to dial in the actual media buying, whether we're spending on X, LinkedIn, or Meta. I won't talk about any of the search platform, more like launch to discovery. They're telling us, and this is like, they're proving it out, we're spending the money on this. They're like, stop worrying about the targeting and worry about what is the contents of the assets going live. And we want to understand and control the reasons why things are working, and it's just really difficult to choose what's working, which is why volume is the key of where we're going to. Now, we measure 3 things internally at most of the brands, depending on the size they're at, but it's cost per asset. Meaning, like, how much did it cost for the person that made that creation? How much did it cost for our designer to kind of edit it? And how many did they produce for us? So I'm trying to optimize at a cost per asset that goes live. And this is before we start spending on it, because people don't bake in, I have to spend on this, which means that asset's actually going to become much more expensive, hoping that it actually produces for us. So it usually starts with macro concepts, so anywhere between 3 to 4 a week. That then gets turned into the various assets that we believe, is it more video, is it more image, is it a human led, or is it graphical led? And then we go live. How many did it hit? We believe a hit rate, depending on the brand, it's like at their target CAC, or target cost to acquire a customer, and then a little bit above. Because if we're able to spend at a profitable rate and get a little bit more out of it, we'll be like, cool, that's a hit. Maybe we should ID it around this. But it really is hard to understand why things are going to hit for various reasons, because you might catch a different algo on a different platform. So I do
This
think
is
the
funny
volume.
because we've been using, so like for us, I have this B2B marketing podcast, and we've done 200 episodes, and I use that as part of
Oh,
our like
geez.
creative machine, basically, right? We get 4 or 5 clips. I work with this amazing company called Hatch. They produce all my podcasts, they do all the clips and everything, and especially with LinkedIn now, like getting
Video.
LinkedIn's always a little bit behind the game in video. They have this video feed, and so Eric at Hatch was like, LinkedIn has this new video tab. They are prioritizing vertical video clips, and so they're going to get more impressions than a regular one. Anyway, the point of my story here is there is something funny though, which is like, and I'm sure Nick can relate to this. You can spend all the time and effort and money in the world, and then I go on a hike, like I'm rucking with my vest on, I'm with my wife in the mountains of Vermont, and I post a 7-second clip. That was the most that was the video that did the most impressions out of anything I've ever done. And I'm like just smashing my head against the wall, and I'm like, this is the meta lesson for everybody. It's like, that is why you need to be able to test. That is why you need to think about volume, because you can hire the agency, you can go do 3 days of shooting in a studio somewhere, and then lo and behold, like the 7-second raw video on my like shitty little iPhone 13 mini phone is the one that is the post that gets 50,000 impressions. And so but that's a learning. Now, if I did every post like that, it's not, this is why this is a fun game, because it's not always the same thing that's going to work. But I think you have to be able to be open to just like seeing what happens. It's the same thing with text posts. Maybe it's a 1-line post that goes off, or maybe it's a super meaty and in-depth post. You got to be able to test multiple versions.
That's super well said, man.
And it's annoying. It's like we came up with the greatest ad idea in the world, but it's okay. You asked about why posting on social media, and I think it's 2024, 2025. Like, I think especially in the B2B world, social media is still seen as like a other channel. It is like, you give it to the intern, let the intern manage social media because, she's hip, she gets it, she's younger, right? There is not marketing and social media. If you haven't noticed, this is how we all, like, how did you see the Jaguar ad? Where'd you see it? On TV? No, you probably saw it on Instagram, right?
Twitter.
Or you saw it on X, right? And so that is the same. That is the same for B2C as it is for B2B. We are on those platforms first, right? And so I often say, like, I came up studying, somebody mentioned Dan Kennedy earlier. Like, I love classic direct response marketers like David Ogilvy in advertising, Bill Bernbach, like those classic like VW ads, right? Those guys would literally kill to have the access to social media and customer feedback that we have today. You don't have to do focus groups. Like, I talk to companies that we work with now. It's like they got to spend a half-day focus group. I'm like, I have a lot of followers on LinkedIn in my niche. I can post an idea. Like, when we decided to do our first event this year, I literally wrote a post. It was like, hey, we're thinking about doing our first event. Would you come? Okay, let's do the event. Like, everyone comments, let's do the event. It is the ultimate feedback loop. And so the reason I post every day, or roughly, is because it's obviously a great way to promote our business, right? And my company and what we're doing, but it's also a great way to test and get feedback on ideas. And so I can't think of a single thing that we've launched now at Exit 5 that we didn't at least have like a breadcrumb or a little taste from organic social first that led us to take that next step. And just John is in the chat and said, what type of follower count does one need to generate for gravity? It could be 500. It could be 500 followers on X. I think on LinkedIn, it's people ask this question because they want like the magic number, like, oh, if I just get to X number of followers. But here's the thing. It's not necessarily about the followers, because if you can write a post, the feed, the algorithm is going to naturally distribute. Like, if you can hit something that works, they're going to distribute that to way more people than you actually have followers, right? But I think on LinkedIn in particular, it seems to me to be like 5,000 to 10,000 followers is the sweet spot of, I know many founders that are in the 5,000 to 10,000 follower range, which is totally attainable for most people, that they would tell you that LinkedIn has become like the number one source of inbound for their business.
Yeah, I'll double down on that for us. Like, from the I'm at 25,000 now on LinkedIn, 58,000 on Twitter. Like the volume of quality after I hit like 10 to 15,000 on LinkedIn was night and day. Night and day. Like the quality of work and time and effort and content needed, especially graphics, and now video on LinkedIn, the value is definitely there. And it's not, it is very, you'd be surprised having messages and videos and content coming from the company page versus figureheads within the company. Like there's multiple strategies that support this, but trying to go from a human to human perspective versus just the brand page has been, and I say brand, whether it's SaaS or not, but everything that we've done promotion wise for the SaaS side, if you're speaking to the one that's using it, a lot of like screen examples, screen shares has been some of the best performing assets from a human to
Yeah.
human for B2B perspective.
I'll notice now, like I have plenty of followers now, but I'll notice that like in that example of that video, I kept going back to it and the numbers kept growing. And so that told me that I don't have proof of this, but that told me that that video got put into the LinkedIn video feed. And I started to get likes and comments and views from all these people who weren't necessarily following me. And then that moment in time also correlates to like I did gain more followers that time. So I think that's one of the powerful things about social media is it can be one or two posts, that go viral, and viral is relative in your niche. But the whole thing is like you have this machine that can distribute your content for you if you can strike the right chord. And that's what you need to start to build a following. And last thing, just on this, like people often talk about followers being a vanity metric. I can tell you with absolute certainty that followers are not a vanity metric. It's like essentially like getting people to opt in to see your content. When I was running marketing at Drift, David, who's a CEO, and we had this amazing play. We were selling into the enterprise. We made a list of the top, we went to our sales team and we got a list of our top 250 accounts, like all accounts that were like, high six-figure deals. We hired someone on Upwork at the time to go and make us a spreadsheet with the CMO and the CEO at all of those companies. And then there was a limit. You can't connect with as many people as you want, but maybe we could send 10 or 20 connection requests a day. Every day for like a month, we went and we just tried to go and connect with all these people on LinkedIn. I would say it was probably about 80% because we look legit. We're a legit company. 80% of those people accepted our connection requests. Those are now then people who have essentially opted in to see our content. We can't guarantee that they're going to see it, but now that they're following us, they're going to see our stuff. Followers are only a vanity metric and irrelevant if it's like, Nick has 50,000 followers on Twitter for, mostly about D2C stuff, but he's only posting about, like CrossFit or something, right? Like the audience has to match. But I have seen a dramatic impact on my business as my followers have grown, and I mostly only write about B2B marketing, so it's all related. Or ask Chase, right? Do you think 375,000 followers on LinkedIn is a vanity metric? Probably not. He drives massive amount of value for his business with that following.
Amen.
Huge. Dave, get a little bit tactical here. So thinking about there's a strategy that you build for the content that you put onto LinkedIn, and then there's that video where you just go film it in the hills and you post it and it goes viral. I guess like in those cases where the virality is achieved, are you then looking at that and being like, hey, how can I learn from this and do more of it? Like, is that ever a feedback loop that you're looking to generate?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to use the signals to do more of what's working. I think for me, though, in that case, like I've made a strategic decision to not do a lot of that type of content. I think I could go more viral and put myself on camera more in like situations and like have my kids in video and use my family and here's my wife. And I just don't want to do that. I want to take a different approach. And so I think for me, it's like every now and then I will mix in a photo, I will mix in a more personal video. And I think those things compound over time. If I only posted like the highly edited, like Dave talking on podcast clips, that would only work so well. I think it's important to like sprinkle in some of your personality into your content. And so maybe it's like one out of every 5 or 10 posts is going to be more raw and real for me. But I'm also like, it also all relates to the type of company that I'm building. So I'm building I am the face of the brand because it's my company, but I'm not out there being like, I'm a solo consultant. This is the Dave methodology, get in Dave's funnel. Like I'm trying to elevate Exit 5 to be beyond Dave. I'm just the spokesperson for that company. So that strategy also dictates my approach there. But you absolutely have to look at the signals and be like, yeah, when I have a podcast and we talk about Instagram, Instagram for B2B marketing, and that episode flops, okay, that's even a signal. We're not talking about creative, but that's a podcast episode. That doesn't get as many listeners as an episode about account-based marketing. Let's go do more of that. That's what's really powerful about the tools we have today as marketers.
So interesting, because like even the through line here for me are like your content pillars. So it's like bringing in the family and the personal stuff becomes like a pillar that you have on X amount of basis. And Nick, this kind of brings me back to when you were talking about the volume of creative, and something that you had mentioned in there were the macro concepts. So it's like for the brands that you're working with, it's like you want the macro concepts, then you dive into individual versions. So the question I have for you is like, how are you going about determining what those macro concepts would be for a specific brand?
So I think this is where we can start leveraging some of our favorite buzzwords around AI and sentiment analysis. So the benefit and the beauty is we have a large volume of purchases on the D2C side, which means reviews are highly incentivized because that's what we use to sell. I know on the B2B side, there's definitely testimonials on page, and there's definitely feedback that you get from users, whether it's for requests for different add-ons or requests for product updates, etc. So for us, like when we're able to build specific cohorts, and I'll use a product that I'm like intimately building right now, is we have a non-alcoholic alternative that replicates the feeling you get if you were to drink an alcoholic beverages with no hangover. Okay, so even just in that example itself, there's a lot of areas to pull into it. But if I'm going back into all the customers who are telling me, I believe that this is good for me to use at these specific times, going out, staying home, being by myself, those start to become the overarching angles. And you just need validation from any of these tools, whether you're using ChatGPT to pull out most consistent words being used, or pull out our 1-star review versus a 5-star review and highlight the commonalities or highlight the differences between the two. That's usually where we like to start with, because we're getting that large volume of inbound. Now, I would say if you wanted to get this initial feedback, it's first off starting to not have a romanticism towards what you're launching. This is what the volume does. Like, you just can't care about every single piece that you're creating because there's just so much. But when you have only 1, 5, 6 things that launch in a week, you get a little bit of like emotionally attached to hoping that the outcome becomes what you want it to be, because you're like, I thought about this thing really hard and I got approval from 6 people and I really want this to work. And so you might let that run a little bit longer than it should be running. And I think we got a little cold over here because we've been grinding since the COVID days, where it was everybody had to be online and buy all of our things. Now the world's open up and we don't really command the pocket like we used to. And so we don't care as much because we know that this is kind of like the way forward. And there's a lot of tools that allow us to like understand what to do better at, but it comes down to the volume overall, man.
Very cool. And then Dave, I have the same one for you. It's like yours is the organic play here. All right. I guess the first part is like, do you formalize content pillars? And is that something you're thinking about?
Personally, no, I just write. But if I was guiding, I mean, I've just been doing this every day for 7, 8 years now. So I don't have like a methodology. I don't have a doc. I can just go and write. But if I was guiding a CEO or consulting or helping somebody, I would absolutely have some pillars. But I think there's like a side of this where you try to get to PR company, PR agency with this, and they're like, here are the 6 talk tracks for Nick. And it's like, no, here's what you need to do. You need to figure out what is the intersect, like what would it be valuable for you to be known about? Right. And so for me, it's like B2B marketing, but I didn't set out to be like, I'm going to be value. I want to be value. I had a career and I did well and I shared what I was doing online, and that led to building a following. I never was like, all right, here I go, mom, I'm going to go build my personal brand. It was like, no, I love marketing. I love writing about marketing. Social media is an incredible outlet to share things that you enjoy doing because you attract like-minded people, whether you're into, yoga or B2B marketing. I start sharing my B2B marketing stuff and thoughts and opinions online, and you start to build a following. And so for me, it's like 80% of my content is related to B2B marketing. And then 20% is just like maybe me trying to be funny, only to risk like half of the comments, like completely misinterpreting what I wrote and hating me, hating me for that. but I don't. I think it's more important to be like, what is the topic you want to be known for? Because I think, especially on LinkedIn, where LinkedIn with organic, you can post max like once a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And typically it's best in the morning. If you're going to post again later in the day, it's got to be like 6 to 8 hours later. On Twitter, you can just go straight Elon and just tweet 100 times a day, and no one's going to see all those things, right? On LinkedIn, you kind of have one or two. I would just call it one post a day to make that easy. And so you have to understand, like, okay, what's the thing that I want to write about today? I like to write about something like, I kind of have two tracks. I have evergreen stuff. So that is stuff that I know works well. And I just have that. You can go to LinkedIn, you can sort by impressions, and I'm just kind of always scheduling like out in the future some evergreen stuff. And then like today, I had a clip that I was going to post, but I didn't want to schedule it. So I sat down and I saved it, and I sat there, right after I dropped my kids off to school. I'm sitting there drinking my coffee, and I'm going to like, all right, today I'm going to write my LinkedIn post for the day. Like, you can't just automate all of it. You have to, there's also some value that LinkedIn places on, like, they know that you're there. I do notice that my non-scheduled posts perform better than my scheduled posts. However, like life gets in the way. Like, I can't just always be there 100% organic. So scheduling is important, but I treat it like my inbox is a huge part of my business. And so heck yeah, I find 20 to 30 minutes a day to write content for LinkedIn because it's strategically valuable to me.
Well, so I'll get even deeper on this tactic because I had to go deep on this tactical area. The pillars of the service that you offer is usually like, these are who we're best for. And this is usually case studies around like, you have a core segment of your customers that you will 9 out of 10 times be perfect solution for. Okay. That makes up at least 30% of the overall content. This person had this problem. This is the solution that we deployed. Here's how it could probably be deployed for you. Then there's like this weird vibe of, we want to work with companies that have like a happy culture or have a employee comments or retention high, because it's like, oh, something must be working, they must be winning, people care about them. So then it's a little bit of like a highlight of internal success or promotion from the team or projects that you're getting awards for. And then the rest of it is, you have to actually have some commentary on the industry or the market that you're serving in, because that way you have a unique perspective that could align with those that might have a similar one or not the same, and you don't want them to be following or be a part of you. And so I think, and on LinkedIn, what we've seen versus what happens on X and Twitter, there's a little bit less likelihood for people to kind of call bullshit. They are still in a professional environment, so their ability to go like, nah, you're full of shit. They're probably not going to do that because they know that their boss is following, or they know that the team is following. They know that on X, good luck, like good luck with happening there. But you can kind of get a little bit more strong and firm of like, this is what we believe and this is the path we're going towards. And I do think, and kind of what Dave was talking about, you only pull out the family if you really, really actually believe in that, or you need to do that, because it could go a different type of way. And we've all seen some of those cringe posts about like, my wife just gave birth. Here's the 21 lessons I learned about B2B marketing. Like, you just can't be pulling this.
Yeah. That's a really good point. The other thing Nick made me think of there is, like, in addition to the like talk tracks, I think what matters more is you have a strong point of view.
Yes.
Right. And so like the like hearing Nick's story about Brez, right, is like, oh, he's clearly built this brand with a strong point of view. And so I don't need content pillars. I need to just have this strong point of view that, like, you should be able to enjoy something that doesn't mess with your sleep, doesn't get you hungover, isn't bad for you. And so my point of view is that you should be able to enjoy something, or like somebody that's blown up in the last couple of years is this guy called Justin Welsh, and he writes about solopreneurship, right? That's like 99.9% of his posts are about like solopreneurship. It's the only way. It's how you get, it's boom, 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 solopreneurship. That is how you get known, right? Chase, what's his thing? What comes to your mind? Email marketing, right? Email marketing. So particularly, this is what I'm going to say earlier, but I lost my train of thought because I'm just genuinely enjoying this conversation. I'm learning from Nick. Is you need to limit all the things that you want to talk about. I get that you like cars. I get that you like to go for a run. I get that you like to eat paleo diet, whatever. Nope. What's the thing you want to be known for? And there's your talk track. You need to become the email marketing lady, become the SEO guy, become the solopreneurship person, right? Be the B2B marketing guy, be the non-alcoholic, different way of drink guy. That is the way. And then from there, then you can iterate. Then you try different messaging, you try different copy, you try different creative, but you got to have that strong point of view. That is what works really well. And I love that as a litmus test, because that is a bullshit filter for a lot of brands. It's like, I'm around a lot of startups in the B2B space. I can tell you that it's not about tactics. The reason most of the companies that I know are not doing well is because it goes back to the timeless, most important marketing lesson there is, most important marketing channel there is. It is your story. They lack a clear company. They lack strong positioning, and they lack a clear differentiator. That is the 80% of it, right? And so if you can have that clearly differentiated point of view, go nuts, create all your content in the world. And last thing on this is what's amazing about B2B, you don't have to be Mr. Beast. You don't need millions of subscribers on YouTube. You can be wildly successful with like 5 to 10,000 followers on LinkedIn.
Yes.
You don't need millions.
This is such a good conversation. Like, I feel like even another through line that I'm picking up on is like how important storytelling is for everything you do, right? Like the pillars allow for a stronger story. Knowing your point of view allows for a stronger story. So I think like even me just listening into you guys and for the viewers here, I think a big piece is just like, what is the story you're trying to tell, and get super clear around that.
And
Like, for
who
example,
else is talking to that audience with the same story? Like, let's be aware, like you might think your story is amazing, but there's 10 other brands that are telling the same story. So then you can't tell that story. Or you can tell the story, but it's got to be different. It's got to be your
and
way.
how would you guys differentiate across that? Like, I think that's a good question, because like a lot of people are in a similar industry with others. So from both of your opinions.
I mean, one of the answers is like the niche can be you, right? The fact that Nick is the guy making this brand and his personality and his injecting that, the niche can be you. It's a tough question to answer because there's a lot of nuance. Like you'd have to like lay out all the 5 or 10 brands, but a differentiator could also be the creative, right? Another brand in your space, their creative is very stuffy and formal. You know, yours is like you're shirtless in a cold plunge talking about your hot takes on the industry. Like, how are you going to stand out? I think that's where creative is an amazing way to differentiate.
You know, it's also like you can see everything that these people are promoting and pushing. So you'll just be like, this ad's been running for this long, this must be working. And if you believe that your product is just as good or better, there's no reason to like steer away from that. There might be a little bit of there's differentiation because you have your own identity. You do it a certain different way, and that would be probably the easiest, like most tactical way of going about it. But even there's nothing wrong with. I believe in our industry, like it's very difficult to educate a market and then ask them to spend a lot of money. So if you know that other people are educating the market, spending in that area, and it seems that this has been this theme or this angle or this communication point for them is working, there's something there. And like that's worth investigating. That's worth going like, do we align with this? Should we kind of promote this and put it in our own unique spin? Cool. If not, it might be the opposite direction. We don't agree with this. We vehemently believe that we should go the other direction. And even that in itself is a place to start.
This is so interesting, because we talk about this internally at Motion too, but like your product, service, or solution, whatever it might be, like can only act as so big of a moat at the end of the day. Like someone can ultimately copy it unless you're innovating really,
Yeah.
really quickly.
I'm going
But
to
the
put this
real differentiator becomes the moat, like the go-to-market moat that
Yeah.
you build.
Check out
around
this
it.
company that I just put. I'm looking in the Q&A, and somebody wrote like, "Are there examples of brands in B2B doing this well?" Click on. I have no affiliation with this company. We just saw them recently, but there's a million generative, Gen AI copywriting and marketing tools. Look at this Blaze AI website. Like the creative here is insane. This is how you stand out. I have no idea how or if this is different than any of the other AI copywriting tools, but the homepage literally looks like a comic book. It's superheroes, it's bold text. Like this does not say B2B SaaS tool to me. This says, first of all, my instant thought was like, oh, this guy must own 100% of this company because no one else would be crazy enough. Like if you're a venture backed company or you got a board or, this is like, I'm going to do it my way. But I just think that is the opportunity is to understand like what is everybody else doing. And you also have to accept this. Like sometimes I think we're a little bit too, especially in B2B, we're a little bit like holier than thou. And we can't admit to ourselves that actually marketing sometimes is a game of attention. And can you get somebody's attention right now? There's like there's some like D2C tactics in here. Like, there's a guy like, lighting a barrel of money on fire to like catch, to catch your eye on Instagram. You don't have to do that. But how am I going to get you? How am I going to get your attention? How am I going to get you to stop and pay attention to this? And then I can tell you my story. That matters. That matters a lot.
Got to get to some of these questions, guys. So I'm going to start pulling a couple of them on stage. And I think like this is a nice segue into what you had just brought up there, Dave, at the end. So Kat asks, sorry, correct me in the chat. Most B2B brands are protective of the brand consistency and look and feel. What is a tactic to change their minds? Or even if both of you have opinions on like brand versus performance or on brand versus off brand?
Oh,
God. Throw that one
Dave,
Nick, jump in.
I go first before you come at me, please.
I was gonna toss this up for you so you could dunk it.
I'm so ready for. Okay, so God, we have to make money. We have to make so much money, and like we're B2B, and in the next life that I have, I will just be B2B. Unfortunately, I'm too deep into D2C currently, but the fact that we have these KPIs of whether they're qualified leads or unqualified leads that we have to get to, that the sacrifice of brand and the memory of the reason why they just signed up for this call that's probably going to happen in a couple of days is going to be so it's so forgetful that emotional tie is like, hey, like I have my goal, I have to drive these KPIs. So we can run these branded things that the team believes that they should do, but for every branded, and this is the best way we do it internally at ours, is for every 5 branded you're running, I'm going to have a one that's a little bit loose on the branding side. Or every 3 branded you're running, I'm going to too loose on the branding side. So you don't have to tell them no, because obviously they're strong and they believe in it, and they probably invested heavily in that deck rebuild or the brand rebuild or the website. So you don't want to say no, because I know that's not productive in the conversation, but you do want them to be like, I have to try this because we don't know if this is the right way in the market. And I have 4 examples on SaaS B2B that I personally was driving 4 SaaS companies that will show towards the end of this that are on brand from the wording and on brand from the messaging, but the way in which this was produced for a user like myself as a buyer of the B2B tool was necessary. And that's the real core thing that really matters, is if the message overall was on brand and we were saying the correct things that the brand would be approval of.
That's a good answer, man.
Thanks, Dave.
I would say, is it working? Like we love these like stances. We love these takes. Like, well, I'm like, well, is it working? If it's not working, then why don't we try something else? I'm just not so married to the brand. And I also think brand, what does brand really mean? Is it colors? Is it design? Is it reputation? Is it, you can have an ad that doesn't look on brand because it doesn't have your brand colors and fonts and doesn't look like an ad, but it can still be on brand because your messaging is clear, your story is clear, right? I think like there's a lot of nuance in off brand. Like off brand doesn't mean like be an asshole and like, completely do something that is not true to your brand. I just mean in this context, like, why do we make ads that look exactly like visiting our website and look like a digital business card? Like, let's make ads that's going to get somebody's attention and get people talking. I think another hard thing, just to build on this for a second, the reason people struggle with this in B2B is because I do think typically software is harder to show than physical goods and products, right? You can do much cooler ads for Brez than you can for like marketing attribution software. But there's the challenge, right? How do we make funny videos? How do we make entertaining videos? How do we make educational videos that tell that story? You can do it.
And in the chat on the motion side, we can share a link to like some of the examples we've collected from B2B brands out there that are running ads that are pretty cool. So we can share it so everyone just has some examples.
Oh, share that for me. I want to see it. Put that link in there.
Yeah, that's good.
We got you for sure. Next one I'm going to pull up here is from Ali. So Ali asks, working on a small team and a 1-person social team, very small, what are the most important parts of D2C marketing for B2B that we can carry over to socials with limited personnel? So Nick, toss it to you first, and then Dave, if you have any just tips on smaller teams and how that they can prioritize, essentially.
Yeah, Ali. So this is primarily the group of people that we work with. So your best step forward is kind of setting up an affiliate or referral deal with other people that are currently using your tool currently. And I act as this for some brands that I have good partnerships with. And you have to lean on them to do the creation for it. So like I'll show 4 examples I'll drop in the chat here, but it's basically a small B2B tool servicing the D2C market. The D2C market, for the most part, are pretty broke unless we're all targeting the same like 200 to 400 Shopify stores that most people like to go for. The relatedness of like talking consistently about the problem that is being solved for exactly what Motion is doing is we have creative analytics for your smart and for your analytical team, or for your creative person and your analytical person. So it's a reproduction of the consistency of solution that you're solving for the person that needs to do their job better over and over. Then it's actually being pretty relevant on the meme slash conversation towards what the market is currently experiencing. Like for instance, right now, everything should be about Black Friday, Cyber Monday. What is the stress and the fear that everyone's going towards? Are we gonna hit targets? So the ability to have that relation is actually a little bit easier on a smaller side because you don't have as many approvals, but the volume is probably going to be the hardest thing to solve for. So templatizing and or leveraging some people that are actively using your tool, whether that's with a discount or whether that's with like, hey, can you jump on with us real quick, give us some feedback, and then making content that way has been beneficial. Also, when you're doing onboarding or when you're doing CS back and forth with the team, asking for approval to record the calls and then having it made into a couple of pieces of content from Claude has been a really smart way that some of the smaller B2B D2C teams are been.
Yeah, that's a good one. That was going to be mine. Is like, I think you just got to switch your brain. I think good social media creators kind of, you switch your brain on to realizing that like everything is content for social media. And so like I'm in a meeting right now. Like actually, well, I got distracted during this because that link of the B2B ad collection from Motion. By the way, you should have like why don't you have like a public facing searchable URL for that? Because I want to share this in Exit 5. Everybody asked me, but I'm trying to Google it. I'd Googled B2B ad collection from Motion and you can't get it.
We have to do that.
Yeah,
we have
free
to do that.
SEO tip. There you go. Because like
Appreciate
I
that.
would, because people ask me all the time, hey, what's good B2B? Where are good B2B ads? Like you just go to Google and type like, oh, B2B ad collection from Motion. But I think switching your brain onto like every call, every meeting, you're inside the company. Think about all that content can be used for social media. Also, you're usually doing lots of other things. You maybe have a podcast. You're maybe doing webinars. You're writing newsletters. I like to see it as all of those things are related. And so, as an example here, if we send out a newsletter that performs really well, we'll take that and we'll tease that out. And I already know that that's a signal that people like that content. And so we'll turn that into content for LinkedIn. Like it's building that constant flywheel of all of your content. That's how you do more without like having to sit there with an open Google Doc and be like, all right, what hot takes do I have about my industry? Like that's really hard to do. So I like to have a backlog of like lots of social stuff where I can always be writing and pulling from.
I love it. Okay, I think there's a couple tactical ones that people had when we were talking about building up our personal brands and like community there. So one of the questions that came in from Marissa, and Dave, toss this one to you first. Thoughts on crossover between CEO and the company brand being a thought leader in the space? Do you think the CEO should post daily and simultaneously to the brand, or simultaneous? Post daily
The
simultaneously to the brand.
company don't use the company brand page. People buy from people. Social media works really well with people. I think you can be effective as a brand page. You just got to be really, really funny and creative and educational. It doesn't always work. You need to give your brand a personality. I think because people buy from people, I would focus on the CEO. The reason I focus on the CEO and the founder is because the person who typically started that company has some background, like founder of Motion, right? It's not like he just woke up one day and was like, yeah, I have this idea to get rich. I'm going to start a SaaS creative analytic platform, right? It's like, no, they have some backstory. They did something in their previous role. Those make for the perfect ingredients. They're the ones that are in the investor and partner and customer meetings. They have all the best content for social. I like to tell people to take this strategy, which is I'd treat the company page like the news ticker for the brand, because it does matter that you have a presence there, because everybody is on LinkedIn to look at a company like how many employees do they have? Where are they located? Are they hiring? Are they legit? So I would simplify it and use the company page as a way to like share company news. We just raised our Series C. We just hired this person. Here's this new research report. Here's this award we won. But you use the individual pages to build brand, to build reputation, to build thought leadership.
And Nick, any separate points on that one, or just full retweet?
We'll let that go. We'll let that ride. Double tap.
Perfect. I think we have time for potentially one more or two. We'll see how easy this one is or not. Donatella asks, is the best way to reach B2B customers through LinkedIn, or are there other channels to consider? Dave, let's throw that to you first.
Yeah, I mean, there's always other channels to consider. It really depends on your niche, and so I think there are a billion active users or something like that, or a billion people on LinkedIn. I don't know if that's active users or not. Don't quote me on that. Ask ChatGPT. But most likely, if you're in B2B, your audience is in some form on LinkedIn. There's always maybe 2 out of 10 people that they're not. They're in some like, super deep, like, hardware manufacturing industry, and they're not. And then LinkedIn is, again, just another channel. The ultimate marketing question is like, who is your audience and where do they hang out in person and online, and how do you get in front of them? For most people, LinkedIn is going to be there, but it might not. It might be trade shows. It might be events. It might be direct mail. It might be local associations. That's the kind of framework that I would think about.
And
Yeah,
Nick, from your
I think
experience, any channels?
LinkedIn,
Sorry.
especially now, especially as they're building like more into the video side of things, they're just trying to get more and more people to spend time on it. It's like if you see the direction LinkedIn's going in, they know that we're spending time on YouTube. They know we're spending time on these other places. The long tail, the beauty of LinkedIn and YouTube, the ability to create long tail and it for to live for a lot longer than just the fast feed of X or Meta or Instagram or TikTok or in these places is just the benefit is there, and the length of life that you get and the long tail of rev is there. So YouTube is a little bit harder to understand because it takes a lot of content planning and it takes a lot of like episodal consistency. LinkedIn's the easiest place to start because the hardest thing for most people is give me the consistency and defining the pillars of sharing, which is where it's like start there, understand there, build the outbound there. Because just within the platform itself, that's not even getting the downloadables. It's not even doing live events and invites. It's not even doing like a good outbounding strategy or a play after the organic starts to happen. So I think you have more than enough. A full team could be on LinkedIn for sure.
And people often like bucket like being on LinkedIn with like, well, I don't personally post on LinkedIn. I think just like anything, somebody mentioned Reddit. Like I'm on Reddit every day. If I really want the answer to something, you go to Google and you type your search and you add the word Reddit, obviously, and you get into some subreddit. I've never posted on Reddit. Even in our community, most of the people are lurkers. There is an overwhelming majority of people that are on LinkedIn that are lurkers. And so don't assume like, oh yeah, Dave is like a hardcore LinkedIn user. He's posting every day. I have friends that never post on LinkedIn, but they know that LinkedIn is where they go to like find a job, to look up companies. Almost everybody that I know in that world has a LinkedIn account. They just might not be posting there. Doesn't mean that they're not there. They're probably going to see your stuff.
And all of this stuff is always worth testing. So it's just like if you are trying to find those channels for distribution, like Dave said, he has a like a podcast as well as posting and building the personal brand. Nick has so many different communities and like events that he's ultimately built out from the ground up. And I think like when we started this conversation, we talked about paid ads, right? So it's just like if you do have budget, make some great creative and see if it's getting you to the right person. We've done that at Motion and it's worked quite well as you started moving forward. Guys, I sincerely appreciate you both from the bottom of my heart. Chat, you have to show some love in the chat. You have to show some love. Let's get the emojis going. Let's get the love. Let's get the love, y'all.
Thanks for the engagement, everybody. Really good feed. Thank you guys so much.
We'll see you on the next one. And guys, this is the best. Really, really appreciate it. We'll talk soon, okay?
It's time to ship more winning creative with Motion's creative analytics platform that helps you scale winners into unicorns and helps you figure out where your ads might need just a little more help. Join over 2,100 teams shipping winning ads with Motion like Vuori, True Classic, HexClad, and more. Get a free VIP tour today and you can see how Motion can help your creative strategists and your media buyers speak the same language.